Everyone in town had turned their back on her, whispering behind closed doors about her past, judging her before they even knew her name. She wandered the cold streets alone, her heart heavy, dreams shattered, and hope almost gone. Every night she slept under the stars, feeling invisible, unwanted, a shadow in a world that had no place for her. But then, one stormy evening, a mysterious figure appeared on the horizon, a tall, rugged cowboy with eyes that seemed to see through the walls she had built around her. He rode past the judgment, past the whispers, straight to her trembling form, and without a word, offered her a hand, a chance, a glimmer of warmth she had forgotten existed. Something in his gaze told her he understood loss, loneliness, and pain. As she hesitated, torn between fear and hope, the first spark of trust flickered inside her, hinting at a life that might finally belong to her. She walked through the dusty streets alone, her small bag clutched tightly, every step heavy with the weight of yesterday's disappointments. Life had never been kind to her. Each day brought new struggles, hunger, cold nights, and the sting of people turning away when she needed them most. Whispers followed her wherever she went, cruel voices spreading stories she had no power to stop, painting her as someone broken, unwanted, hopeless. Yet despite the pain, she moved forward with quiet determination, her eyes searching for even the smallest sign of kindness, the tiniest flicker of hope. She had learned to survive on her own, to hide her fears behind a calm face, but inside, loneliness gnawed at her heart. Each passing shadow reminded her of doors closed, hands withdrawn, dreams crushed. Still, she refused to give up, unaware that soon, a man from the horizon, a millionaire cowboy with secrets of his own, would change everything and offer her a chance she never imagined. The storm raged with an unforgiving fury, rain pelting the earth like a relentless drumbeat as she stumbled along the muddy path, shivering from both cold and fear, her soaked clothes clinging to her skin, each step heavier than the last. And just when her hope began to fade entirely, a silhouette appeared. Through the sheets of rain, a figure tall and unwavering against the darkness, the brim of a wide cowboy hat casting a shadow over sharp, observant eyes that seemed to pierce straight through her despair. He rode slowly toward her, horse hooves sinking into the wet ground, yet moving with a steady rhythm, a quiet strength radiating from him. And she froze, unsure whether to turn and run or plead silently for mercy. The wind whipping her hair across her face, her heart pounding with both dread and a strange flicker of curiosity. And without a word, he dismounted, boots sinking into the mud, and extended a hand not in judgment, but in invitation. A gesture so simple, yet so profound that it unsettled her, memories of rejection clashing with a sudden desire to trust. And for a long moment, she hesitated, teeth chattering, eyes wide with a mixture of caution and longing, every instinct screaming to flee while every part of her whispered that this man was different, that something in his calm, steady gaze promised safety, warmth, and perhaps even hope. And slowly, trembling yet compelled by a force she could not name, she stepped closer, wet hair plastered to her face, eyes glistening with unspoken fear. And he offered her his coat, large, worn but clean, wrapping it around her shoulders without a single question, as if he understood that words were unnecessary, that actions alone could speak louder than the judgments of a town that had never known compassion and the fire in. His cabin glowed faintly behind the windows, beckoning her toward light and shelter, a haven from storms both outside and within her heart. And as she moved forward, hesitant steps carrying her closer to the porch, she felt a strange mixture of relief and suspicion, her chest tightening with memories of betrayal while a small, almost imperceptible warmth began to spread inside her. And he watched her, silent, patient, allowing her to choose, to decide whether to accept this unexpected kindness. And when she finally crossed the threshold into the dimly lit cabin, she inhaled the scent of wood smoke and leather, a strange comfort wrapping around her like the coat he had draped over her shoulders. And the rain continued to drum against the roof, relentless and chaotic, yet inside, the world seemed to pause, two souls standing in a fragile balance between fear and trust. And for the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself to imagine that maybe, just maybe, she had found someone who would see her for who she truly was, to understand her without pity or expectation. And days passed quietly on the ranch, the storm long gone, but the tension it left behind lingering like a shadow over their newfound connection. And slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, they began to learn about each other, each gesture and glance revealing layers neither had shared with anyone before. He noticed the way her hands trembled slightly when she spoke of her past, the courage hidden beneath her fragile exterior, and he admired it silently, respecting her strength without ever pushing her to explain more than she was ready to, while she, in turn, began to see beyond his rugged, stoic demeanor, glimpses of gentleness and patience that hinted at a life shaped by loneliness and responsibility, moments where his guard lowered just enough to let her in, and with every shared meal, every conversation by the fire, every quiet morning spent tending to the horses together, trust began to take root like a fragile seed, cautious and delicate yet persistent, and she felt herself slowly opening, laughter breaking through walls she had built from years of rejection, a smile that had not existed in months spreading across her face as he listened attentively, never interrupting, never judging, a silent understanding bridging the gap between two souls who had known only solitude. Yet beneath the warmth of companionship lingered a persistent fear, the fear that one wrong word, one mistake, or one shadow from their past could shatter this fragile bond and send them both retreating into isolation once again. And she caught herself watching him in quiet moments, noticing the subtle ways he cared for the ranch, the animals, and the few people he allowed close, realizing that behind the rough exterior was a man capable of immense compassion, a protector who had never asked for anything in return, and he, in turn, found himself drawn to her resilience, the quiet bravery that refused to bow even under the weight of life's cruelty, her ability to find hope where others saw only despair, and these realizations intertwined like threads of a tapestry, weaving moments of laughter, shy glances, shared stories, and long silences that spoke louder than words ever could, until slowly, the fear of losing each other became both a warning and a magnet, making each interaction charged with intensity. Every touch tentative yet electric, every eye meeting holding the weight of unspoken promises and a desire neither fully acknowledged aloud. And as the sun set behind the hills, painting the sky in shades of orange and crimson, she felt a warmth in her chest she had never known, a sense of belonging that did not demand perfection, a feeling that perhaps this man, with his quiet strength and unshakable presence, might be the first person to truly see her, to understand her without pity or expectation. And he, watching her as she moved gracefully around the barn, realized that the loneliness he had carried all his life was beginning to fade, replaced by a connection so profound that it frightened him with its intensity yet thrilled him with its promise. And as night fell over the ranch, the stars reflecting in their eyes, the world outside ceased to matter, leaving only two hearts slowly, cautiously, inevitably entwining, bound by trust, respect, and a fragile hope that neither had dared to believe could exist. And as the days turned into quiet evenings, filled with shared chores and soft conversations by the fire, the walls they had built around themselves began to tremble under the weight of truths long buried. And one night, when the wind howled outside and the moon cast silver shadows across the cabin, she finally spoke of the life she had tried to forget, her voice trembling but steady as she revealed nights spent in cold, empty rooms, the sting of abandonment by people who should have cared, the hunger and fear that had been her constant companions, and each word hung in the air like fragile glass, delicate and sharp, cutting through the comfort of their growing bond. While he listened with a stillness that made her heart pound, noticing the way his jaw tightened, the shadow in his eyes that mirrored his own memories of loneliness and loss, a childhood spent without warmth, without guidance, filled with responsibility too heavy for anyone so young. And as she spoke, tears threatened to spill, but he reached out, a hand steady and unjudging, resting lightly on hers, silently promising he understood pain in a way that words could never capture. And then, when he finally shared his story, the room seemed to hold its breath, his voice low, almost a whisper, telling her of nights spent in empty halls, of learning to face the world alone, of a heart that had never known true belonging until now. And the revelation struck both of them with a mixture of fear and relief. Fear that these truths could shatter the fragile trust they had built, relief that they no longer had to carry the burden alone. And as their eyes met, unguarded and raw, a shiver ran through her, the intensity of connection mingling with the suspense of uncertainty. For while the warmth between them had grown, the knowledge of each other's scars carried the weight of vulnerability, making every glance, every gentle touch, every shared silence a delicate dance between hope and hesitation. And she realized that loving him meant accepting the entirety of his past, the shadows and the solitude, just as he was learning to accept her wounds and her strength. The room heavy with emotion, the firelight flickering across faces etched with unspoken fears, and outside, the wind moaned like the distant echo of memories neither could forget. But inside, amidst the flickering shadows and soft murmurs, a fragile understanding blossomed, a recognition that the past, no matter how painful, did not have to define their future, that trust, once broken, could be mended slowly, carefully, if both hearts were willing. And as they sat together, hands intertwined, breathing synchronizing, a new layer of intimacy formed, suspenseful and tender, each aware that the other had been shaped by loss, but also that together they could build something stronger than fear, a bond forged through honesty, vulnerability, and the shared courage to face what once haunted them. And as the world outside pressed with gossip, jealousy, and misunderstanding, they faced each obstacle united, learning to lean on each other, to protect and trust, allowing each challenge to fortify their connection rather than destroy it. And gradually, laughter replaced tension, shared meals became rituals of love, quiet nights under stars filled with soft conversation, and they began to form a family in the truest sense. She bringing warmth and care he had never known, he offering safety and belonging she had longed for. And together, they healed, learning to trust completely, to love fully, to create a home in each other's hearts. And in the golden twilight of a quiet evening, as they stood together watching the sun sink behind the hills, hearts full and fears forgotten, the truth settled gently but irrevocably over them both. Sometimes, the family you never had is the one you were meant to find.